Coming out, welcome to the Writ Large Launch Party 2013. We're excited for a nice celebration of student writing at DU. I'm Liz Drogan. I'm one of the faculty editors of Writ Large, and I wanted to introduce our other faculty editors to you. We have Julie Parrish, Nussing Heather Martin, and Megan Kelly, who you're going to hear from later in the evening. We founded the four of us founded Writ Large in 2012, and we've been really excited by the way that it's grown even within a year. One of the best developments of this past year was the addition of 4 student editors to our editorial board, 2 of whom will be facilitating tonight's event. So thank you in advance, Whitney and Monica. And I think that's actually the most exciting part of tonight's event, is that it's an event about students, it's for students, and it's going to be facilitated by students. And I think that really speaks to the culture of student writing here at DU. So thanks to all of you for coming out and being part of that. Appreciate it. Give yourself a hand. And before I turn it over to the students, I did want to thank Doug Hesse, the director of our writing program. His support of undergraduate writing here at DU and of Writ Large has been tremendous. And Writ Large is a journal, and this evening's event would not have happened without his support. So thank you very much. I'm just going to share a few words with us.
I promised to get out of the way of the students. I was trying to explain to my class what a launch party was, which is a sort of anomalous thing these days. But you know, when an author publishes a book, when an issue of a magazine is coming out, it's a great occasion to schedule a party. And so here we are. And it often has a serious touch to it, as we've got some content for you here tonight. As I was thinking about this, I was just musing on how much good writing happens among students here at DU, and how great it is to have a chance to recognize it. This week, in one of my Writ classes, Writ 1633, I'm reading drafts of all sorts of interesting research papers. One of my students has interviewed some members of the Westboro Baptist Church, if you know that notorious group. Another student is doing a really interesting study of expatriates, people who have immigrated to this country from various places, and how do they assimilate or not. One of my students, you learn something every day, is doing some research on bronies. Who knows bronies are? Okay, Devin does. These are all sorts of people, including prominently adult males, who are enamored of My Little Pony, dress up as characters of My Little Pony. And Ryan is interviewing some of these folks, doing this great ethnographic study online. As you can imagine, as a teacher who gets to read a lot of students' writing, it's just an endless delight to see the ingenuity of things. So, thanks to my colleagues Heather, Megan, Liz, and Julie for putting all of this together for the second time around. Thanks to several other of my colleagues in the writing program who submitted student work and who read student work. Thanks to my colleague Lauren Picard, LP, who did all of the design work on the journal, which I think is plenty spiffy, and also designed the posters that you'll see out there at the end. And then finally, I want to second the thanks to Devin Barnes, Ellie Linder, Monica Hellman, and Whitney Harkness, the student editors, who will have the great delight of introducing our authors here. So let me shut up and turn over to Monica and Whitney. Thanks.
Hello everyone, thanks so much for coming out tonight. got a lot of great writing here, so I'm glad you're all here. Today, this magazine, this year, we have a great selection. Writ large, actually we haven't talked too much about writ large, but we've got a wide range of academic writing, as well as maybe personal narrative, rhetorical analysis, and this year, here tonight, we've got a great selection of authors. And I'll let Whitney introduce herself and talk a little bit about her experience as a student author and now as an editor as well.
Hey everyone. So I actually found out about Writ Large when they contacted me last year and asked if they could publish one of my pieces, which I didn't even know was being considered. So that was a wonderful moment in my abroad experience. I did my monthly email check and found out about this publication. Writ Large, they're newer on campus, which is perhaps why many of you haven't maybe heard of them before this year or even before tonight. So when they contacted me, they wanted to publish one of my pieces, which was about rhetoric that I had actually written freshman year. I'm now a senior, so I published my junior year, and I had completely forgotten about. So it was lovely to hear that. They wanted to work with me. And it was just a wonderful process of editing and actually being able to see my work in print, as I'm sure all the other student authors here tonight can attest to. It was amazing to see something I worked so hard on back in the day that I've forgotten about now, actually in print. And they worked really hard with me to improve my piece and really make it as good as it could be. And now I have a publication on my resume, which is always a very nice thing to have now that I'm job hunting as a senior. So this year I was asked to join the student editor board, which was also very exciting. I think Monica can attest to this, as well as the other two student editors. That it's a very fun experience, and it's kind of interesting to see the flip side of things. We do get to work with the authors, which was incredibly fun, and you also get to read a lot of pieces. I cannot tell you how many different things I learned just reading the submissions and deciding what to put in the magazine and what to reconsider. So it is a great experience for that. I really do hope that you all have a chance to pick up the magazine tonight and read it if you haven't already had a chance to, because you'll learn so much, not just about writing and about these incredible, unique students, but you'll also just learn a lot about the Denver community, as well as our greater world in there. With that said, I'll quit talking and introduce our actual student authors this year to you. So.
All right. First up, we have Sarah Schlitzkopf. She's from Loveland, Colorado. She has actually graduated already, but she's back with us tonight, so that's excellent. And she was a major in sociology and international studies.
Next, we have Tunbi Nguyen, who's actually graduating in 2015. She's from right here in Denver, Colorado, and she's studying international studies.
We also have Cicely Gaume, and she's from Longmont, Colorado, a lot from Colorado today. And she's in the class of 2015 as well. Her major is theater with minors in history and Spanish.
Next up, we have Sonia Crosby Adipo, who's from Highlands Ranch, Colorado, right down the road. Everybody's from Colorado. I feel like an outsider. She's also class of 2015, and due to the trend, and she is actually an accounting major. So if accounting majors can do it, y'all can too.
Next, we have Catherine Thomas. She's from Denver, Colorado, right here. She's also in the class of 2015, and her major is finance and business economics.
And last but certainly not least, we have our male representative for the evening, John Seals, from Aurora, Colorado, new and different. Also class of 2015, and he's majoring in political science. So, with that being said, now we'll transition into some readings, and then after that we'll have a Q&A session. So make sure you pay attention and write down any notes that you might have. So Sarah, do you want to kick us off?
Get the microphone so that everybody can hear me. Okay, I'm Sarah, and for my piece, Writ Large, I wrote a statistical analysis actually looking at attitudes towards inclusive excellence here at DU. And what I'm going to read to you tonight is actually from my discussion and conclusion, since I think that's the most interesting piece of this type of research. Anyway, based on results, we can draw several conclusions about the sample population of University of Denver students. The demographics of the sample tell us that the majority of respondents were white females. Looking closer at the variables indicates that the majority of the students from higher income households are white, and that whites overall are both less likely to socialize outside of their racial group and less likely to find campus diversity to be important to them. Of whites who do seem to socialize outside of their race, it would seem to come from lower income backgrounds. Of those who choose to join a multicultural organization, it would also seem that having a friend of different race is a key factor in that decision. And while non-whites report belonging to multicultural organizations in much greater numbers and socializing outside of their racial groups, this is not simply an effect of having to socialize outside their racial groups due to being a minority. With only 15% of the student population being of color, it would reasonably be expected that socializing with only those within their specific race would be a challenge. These students also seem to feel the benefit of inclusive excellence more, indicating that they find it important. And this could be due to the fact that these students have more to gain. As mentioned previously in my piece, non-white students are more likely to drop out and underperform than their white counterparts. And from the sample, they are also more likely to come from less privileged backgrounds. Overall, the results indicate that the University of Denver's plan for inclusive excellence and diversity is only somewhat trickling down to the students. The majority of the student body still does not seem socialized with those who are clearly different from themselves, partially because they do not see the value in doing so. In fact, it may be that because the administration encourages diversity so heavily without actually having a diverse student body, students can conclude that the actions behind the words do not actually matter. And in order to address this, it would of course help to use admissions to actively recruit more students from underrepresented backgrounds. However, inclusive excellence is not only the responsibility of the administration, but the students as well. On the part of the students, it would be effective for all student organizations to actively engage and collaborate with groups outside of their comfort zone.
Next, we'll have an excerpt from Tuan.
Okay, so I'm Tung B. I wrote a research paper in my Writ 1133 class called Dig Deeper, the Effects of an Urban Garden Project on the Community. And the title's pretty explanatory. Okay. So let's start. Sun Valley. Contrary to what the name might imply, this is a place that has no valley and is not sunnier or brighter than anywhere else in Colorado. It is actually a food desert, a term used to describe neighborhoods and communities that have limited access to healthy, nutritious, and affordable food needed to maintain a healthy diet. It should not be surprising that food deserts are usually located in low-income urban areas, where supermarkets, which are a source of healthy food options, are few and far between. With scarce access to healthy and nutritious food, how can Sun Valley and other food deserts improve their circumstances? A possible answer to this question is a phenomenon known as the urban or community garden. An urban garden is a piece of land that has been transformed into an area of social engagement with the primary purpose of growing produce for consumption. Urban gardens can improve food deserts by providing the inhabitants with access to affordable yet nutritious food in a sustainable manner. One of Denver's urban gardens is located in a lot behind Fairview Elementary, located in Sun Valley. Story has it that more than a decade ago, a couple of teachers started a school garden behind Fairview, next to the parking lot. It was mostly tended by a few elderly members of the community until one day some young thug threw a beer bottle at one of the older gentlemen's head while he was in the garden. Not surprisingly, after the incident, those who had taken an interest in the garden never came back. It wasn't until Mr. D arrived at Fairview Elementary in 1998 that the garden was given new life. What Mr. D saw that year was a field of thistles in a lot that was long abandoned. What made it worse was that the teachers who helped start the garden had already moved on in their lives, so it's up to Mr. D to basically better the garden from the ground up. Partnering with Denver Urban Gardens to restore the garden, the project has now been in existence for 13 years and counting.
Hello, everybody. Is that good?
Yeah,
Here?
move it close.
Yeah?
Move it close, yeah.
Closer?
That's it. No, you're fine there.
We're good? Awesome. So I'm Cicely Gall, and I apologize in advance because I have a cold, so hopefully you'll be able to understand me. But my piece is called Memory and Memoriam, and I wrote it for my Writ 1133 class. It's part research assignment, part personal memoir, part narrative. Yeah? And our assignment was essentially like use constellated research, so from all sorts of different sources to evaluate a topic that had personal significance to us. There's a much more eloquent description of it in the magazine, but that's some kind of context for it. Mine specifically about my grandmother's struggle with dementia and memory in general. So, my grandmother does not simply forget things. People forget things all the time. What they did at the grocery store, why they went into a certain room, what made Midway a turning point in World War II, the name of a new friend or famous stranger. Freud believed that if you can't remember someone's name, you either want to kill them or have sex with them. Some powerful stuff. But they do not forget how to remember. My grandmother does. Due to her degenerative, meaning, as my mom put it, it ain't getting better, senile dementia, her brain tissue atrophies at an accelerated rate, resulting in an inability to retrieve information about old memories and the significantly diminished ability to form new memories, often leading to depression and a lack of autonomy and independence. At least, that's how the doctors explain it. The way I think of it is that the mind is like a large room featuring a big, squishy couch where we keep all our memories like loose change inside the cushions. The ones committed to our long-term storage are those coins that are actually eaten by the couch, stuck relatively permanently in with the stuffing, while the short-term and sensory memories are the change stuck to half-eaten lollipops, wrappers, and pocket lint. With my grandmother's brain, it's like someone decided to clean the couch of all the excess debris, all of that organized chaos which we prize as kids, which helps the change stick in the shallow areas. Now, memories are more akin to precious dollar bills which fall out of the pocket onto the cushion but not into the couch, leaving a transient impression which ends when the bill is soon retrieved from the owner. The rest of the population refers to this as losing your marbles. It turns out that this term is derived from a couple of factors, but none more touching than the reference to the image of a forlorn child having lost his prized playthings. An early citation of this figurative usage is found in an August 1886 copy of the St. Louis Globe-Democrat. He has roamed the block all morning like a boy who has lost his marbles. This, I understand. The dejection of a relatively helpless innocent who has lost something infinitely precious, the center structure of a world. There is no better description of my grandmother's behavior than that of a devastated child who has lost her marbles, continually repeating that she would give just anything to retrieve them and feel better than she does now. It makes sense. Marbles roll out of couch cushions easier than change.
Hello, I'm Sonia. Alright, and so I'm actually from the same professor as well as the same course as Cicely, and so we were supposed to pick an object and constellate it. So choose from maybe economics and cultural factors, and so I actually chose about black hair or maybe African American hair, and there's just a lot of societal implications that comes with that. And so I'm just going to start off. Good Hair has an interview with poet Maya Angelou where she gives a different perspective of the glory of it all. I would say that say that hair is a woman's glory, and that you share that glory with your family, and they get to see you braiding it, and they get to see you washing it. But it's not a bad or a good thing. It is hair. Similar to what Angelou has insinuated, I don't think this is an issue about hair, nor is it one about skin. And I'm pretty sure it's not just a girl thing either. Though I focus this conversation as it pertains to black hair, the real issue here is much more global than we may perceive. I maintain the belief that we, as a human body, may have the identity, may be able to identify why we do things we do, but many of us lack the ability to identify why these things have such a stronghold over our lives. Once we are able to conquer the latter and gain this understanding, it is then that our actions are redeemed in value. We are able to make decisions for our own benefit. Just as Angelou has stated, hair is hair, and it will remain simply as that. It is when we experience the fruits of our labor that we become connected to a family, a friend, and a culture. Furthermore, realizing the worth of our actions then shifts our views from societal expectations as stresses that must be endured towards a perspective that both understands and accepts the choices we make. This is where we find a glory in it all. Still, until an individual comes to this realization, the question why will remain a heavy burden that must be resolved. Unfortunately, when it comes to a black woman's hair, the burden is messy, disheartening, and complicated. I experienced this near the beginning of Rock's documentary when he describes his two young daughters asking him, "Daddy, how come I don't have good hair?" I cannot discern if my emotions are so inspired by the scene because I can relate to these young girls, or if it is because I hold a weighty concern for their self-esteem. Some days I walk through a similar road and want to scream the same question. Yet, at the same time, I wish I could hold these girls tight and whisper to them, like mine, their hair is beautiful. I'd like to tell them that their skin is nothing less than perfect. I'd like to make it clear that they are lovely and that their mothers don't just say so out of obligation. I want them to understand that their beauty is real and true, immeasurable, unrivaled, and desirable. I may not be able to successfully give them the affirmation they need to see their self-worth, but I can wholeheartedly attest to a hope that these girls will one day fathom the absolute truth of a glory rooted much deeper than the roots of their hair. Thanks.
Can you guys hear me? Good. Okay. I'm Catherine Thomas, and the piece that I'm going to be reading today is an excerpt from my literature review that I wrote in Writ 1133 in Liz Durgan's class, actually. And we had to choose a topic about gender and race in either sports or in academics. So my piece is titled Homophobia in Male Athletics. Athletics is considered to be the last closet for gay men. Whether it is in the high school, collegiate, or professional level of athletics, gay male athletes still struggle coming out of the closet in their various sports, especially in the core sports, football, baseball, basketball, and soccer. Despite the fact that the American and many other cultures have become more accepting of homosexuals, bisexuals, and transgendered citizens, the sports world has not yet been able to reach an acceptance of gay male athletes. From the 1960s to the early 2000s, studies showed that sports enforced the creation of a masculine identity in male athletes through the emphasis of gender roles. In order to help enforce the male gender role, slurs and taunts that are negative toward homosexuals and females are used to create and reinforce the masculine athletic identity. Thus, homophobia is at the heart of this process. Both gay and straight athletes are bullied and harassed by their teammates, coaches, and fans as a result of homophobia. Homophobia causes difficulties not only in the acceptance of gay male athletes, but in the cultural acceptance of gays as well. Despite the fact that the sports world is lagging behind in the cultural acceptance of homosexuals, there is evidence that homophobia in sports may be decreasing. Increasingly, sports fans, especially women, show their support and acceptance of gay male athletes, and many professional male athletes have made public statements that they would welcome gay teammates onto their teams. Studies have shown that female athletes universally have been more accepting of gay athletes in athletic communities. While there has been a slight shift in attitudes of acceptance toward homosexual athletes, there is still work that needs to be done to obtain full acceptance. Once this occurs, athletics may finally cease being a closet for gay men.
All right, so my name is Jonathan Zills, and in my writing class, we were supposed to write about a social justice issue that really moved us, and I chose the achievement gap between white and minority students, mainly because I had the strongest connection to it. I remember growing up, and learning was a really big struggle for me compared to a lot of like my white friends and stuff. They just understood stuff really quickly. For me, it was kind of slow, but I was able to fix that through good teachers and through a better school. So I developed that in my paper. I'll go ahead and read it. In the first grade, I began to notice the nuanced differences between us. Teachers and parents tend to shield their first graders from anything that might threaten their self-esteem. As the year progressed, I knew something wasn't right. The lack of stars and smiley faces began to perplex me when I compared my assignments to Adam's. On Adam's papers, there were good job stamps and cute rock stickers and golden stars, while on my homework there was nothing but blank space. The margins were left vacant. As my best friend Adam sat in class, the teacher assistants would pull me outside. They would ask me to sound out words and read short stories to them. I still received no praise, no stickers, no stamps. For a while, my reading levels were below their standards, and I continued to be pulled out of class. I felt frustrated. I always wondered why Adam just got it. How did everything click for him and not me? What made two people so similar, but so different? The academic distance between Adam and me was not uncommon. As I grew up and matured, I realized that my struggle was shared by many minorities. According to the Colorado State Board Committee, whenever there is a performance gap between students of identifiable groups, that distance can be categorized as an achievement gap. Interestingly enough, this is not a new issue not a new issue. According to the Denver Post, in 1999, the governor's task force was created to tackle the issue. However, this move led to few improvements. The growing phenomenon is eliciting new research. Strong evidence suggests new reasons as to why a large achievement gap exists between white minority students. Although experts have long identified the lack of resources within the minority communities as the culprit for the achievement gap, new research has also found that the self-esteem of minorities plays a crucial role in the academic development. Thank you.
All right, so now we have some questions prepared for our authors, and then afterwards we'll open it up to the audience to ask what they would like. So our first question is, what audience did you have in mind while you were writing the piece, and how did that change when you found out you would be published? And whoever would like to respond is free to.
I'll go for it, Mr. Thank you. All right, so I did write a very personal narrative to me, and so really I didn't have an audience that was for anyone to read. I actually thought that no one was going to be reading my piece. And actually, as I was writing, I kept thinking, oh, it's okay, I can be as blunt as I want because my professor is the only one who's going to see it. But really, the only audience was for myself to better understand like why we do the things we do when it comes to Black hair.
Yeah, for me, I was in the same boat. My main audience was the professor. He was a really great professor. His name was Jeffrey Bateman. He doesn't teach anymore, but he really allowed me to open up and to express myself. So he was my intentional audience. But I guess once I found out that this paper could be published, I thought, wow, this could really affect people. This could really change people, change the way the educational system is made and stuff. So.
So there are a lot of different topics and genres covered in this magazine. So how did you come to select the topic that you wrote on for the piece?
I talk about it. This was talking about homophobia and male athletics was not originally what I was going to talk about. I've been figure skating for 15 years, and that's a big part of my life, and I wanted to actually touch on how heterosexual male figure skaters deal with the homosexual stigma that is usually placed on them. But unfortunately, during my initial research, I couldn't find anything about figure skating, and so I just tried to broaden my research into how homophobia affects male athletes, and I really found it interesting, and I loved writing about it.
And well, for my piece, actually came out of a methodology course that I had to take for sociology. And we have to take 2 methodology courses for sociology on research. The first one was ethnography, and I chose to do the Student Alliance Fair Campus, which I was involved with my senior year. And what stood out to me from that research was actually that the experience that Native students had here was not at all the experience that, I'm Native American, but I am not identified as Native American. And the experience that other white friends of mine had had, it just seemed like there was a huge gap in the way that they interacted with each other and the way that non-white students interacted with white students. And that became apparent during the first course. So the second course, we had to do a statistical analysis, which kind of seems a lot more boring when you look at methodology, but it actually allows you to develop some concrete conclusions on what's going on because you're actually using math to back up your observations. And we kind of split the class into doing, some of them wanted to look at politics here, and some of them wanted to look at issues with inclusive excellence here at the University of Denver. So we managed to sneak in some questions in our survey that dealt specifically with minorities and the way that demographics and minorities and student contact come into play. So I was able to make my paper based off of that, but it's actually kind of a personal process as well because I got interested in inclusive excellence because it was something that seemed to matter a lot to friends of mine, but also it became apparent my senior year that it was something that we were kind of having issues with at the
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. A lot of you did a lot of research along with your writing, so we're wondering as well, if you could tell us about the process of writing as well as researching, and what are maybe some challenges you found during that process?
So for my research paper, the first half was a literature review, and then the second half I did kind of like a semi-structured interview, face-to-face with the teacher who teaches the third class at the elementary that has the partnership with Denver Urban Gardens. And the problem there was that I had to interview the fifth graders, so they're 9 and 10-year-olds. So that brought in like the internal review board for the IRP or the university to ensure that their confidentiality and their privacy is kept a secret. And then the other issue I had was that since I was interviewing these 9 and 10-year-olds, I wanted to actively capture their voice and the way they spoke. So some of them would say something like "I'm a" or "cuz" instead of like "because" and "I'm going to." So I tried to represent that in my writing. Yeah.
I'll talk about that. Sure. I'm happy to. I love talking. Mine, when I first got the idea to write about my grandmother's dementia, I was really excited about this because I was like, awesome, medicine has very concrete answers, so it'll be a great and like lengthy answers as well. So I thought it'd be an easy way to fill up that aspect of my paper because I was a very utilitarian-based writer, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, and so I immediately, once I found out that I was really passionate about writing about her dementia, I went and I was looking up, well, basically the research behind it, and the answers I was getting were the exact same ones that I was getting in the doctor's office, which was sort of disheartening, not just from like a paper standpoint, but from I realized that I was really disturbed by that, and I didn't know where to take that further, because I realized that I had a lot of like personal investment in it that was really unresolved. And so, interestingly enough, the research that I looked into soon became more philosophical than I intended it to be, and about like collective memory in the human sense. And I found it to be really, it was at first uncomfortable because the topic's so close to me, and then because I wasn't really sure how to handle research that isn't, wasn't straight up statistics in the first place, or analytically based. And I found a lot of not only literary growth, but also personal growth from it, and just coming to my own sort of understanding of catharsis of what was going on. So thank you, Dr. Sampson, for that.
Okay, so could some of you summarize your main findings and then talk about perhaps the implications in terms of future use or policy?
I'll talk about it. So I conducted my research from the 1960s until 2012, and I know it's a really broad frame, but there's been such a cultural shift in the acceptance of homosexuals, and homophobia has been decreasing, which I think is a wonderful thing. However, it's a lot easier for males who are in individual sports to deal with being homosexual, because they don't have teammates or coaches who are constantly nagging on them, like in football, baseball, basketball, and soccer. But the nice thing is there has been, because there's cultural awareness about the effects of homophobia, the sports community has become more accepting of it. However, as I was doing my research, there wasn't really any, I guess, fix for how they were going to completely cease like the taunts and slurs to homosexuals. So I think it'll be very interesting in the future to see how coaches and teams deal with this factor.
was that inclusive excellence, at least as my experience here as a student for 4 years, was always something that was kind of talked about by the administration, but not really by the students. And I thought that was kind of interesting that like it's something that's very much endorsed, but it's not necessarily something that really like has been picked up by the students and like really implemented into their daily lives. And then I had my professor kind of talk to me and be like, you know, you should probably try and think of like some policy implications because the research is actually really good for it. And it didn't really occur to me that like we could do that. But I sat down and thought about like, well, how do you know, kind of get students to be involved in this? And what I found when I was actually like running the analysis was that the students who really did embrace it and seemed to think that it was valuable were the students who actually did have friends who were kind of outside of their comfort group. And, you know, there's tons of ways that students can be involved in organizations, and if those organizations just actually like reached out to each other and tried to do an event, even just like one event a year with each other, I think that it would, I came to the conclusion that would probably actually help a lot, just because like things seem a lot less scary when you actually try it out and like try and implement that into your daily life. Yeah.
So one of the interesting findings in my research was that minorities actually carry low self-esteem when it comes to academics, so they actually walk into class less confident about learning compared to their white counterparts. So it's hard for them to be taught certain things and to, I guess, to do well on tests when they already think they're going to fail. So, and a lot of times, it's not actually direct. It's not like, oh, I'm going to fail this test, I'm going to fail this test. Sometimes it's still like subconscious. They don't even realize it. So before you even do anything as far as educational reform, you have to tackle that issue, which requires more, I guess, a supportive structure. Also, in my research, I referenced the movie Wait for Superman, and in the movie, it talks about how you have teachers who have tenure, and because they have tenure, they cannot be fired. So you have teachers who are sometimes very, well, not all teachers, a lot of teachers are good, but you have some teachers who are very poor teachers, and basically, instead of getting fired, they kind of get moved down the line. They get moved from this school to that school, to that school, to that school. They end up at some of these schools that are in worse, really poor neighborhoods. They don't have the best resources. So they're kind of stuck there, and they're stuck teaching minority students who already are confident about their learning and don't feel like they're going to, don't feel like they're going to, I'm sorry, I'm kind of nervous right now, so just bear with me. So in Japanese schools where the minorities are at. So it just kind of just repeats the cycle of just minorities not getting the best resources, minorities not being able to receive the opportunity, not being able to I guess, be on the same playing field. So as a result, or in order to fix that situation, we need to funnel better teachers into these schools. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, and so kind of on the flip side, some of you did very personal stories of kind of deep connection to yourself, and we were wondering as well, how did that affect your writing process?
So my paper was mainly focused on the urban garden that's behind the Fairview Elementary School, and I actually attended Fairview, so it was really personal, and the teacher I interviewed was actually my fifth grade teacher. So I knew he was going to be reading my paper, so I wanted to make sure that when I was writing it, I showed the benefits of the school garden and how positive influences were affecting the kids at the school, since the school is like located in a very low income neighborhood, and I feel like the funding that goes towards that type of program is really good. And I also felt like I kind of saw myself in the kids. I
Yeah, mine was obviously very personal. The biggest issue I had when writing this was, well, first, that I realized that I couldn't stop writing it once I started. Like, usually I have to sit there and kind of freak out at my blank Word document for a while. And with this, I was just like, I was kind of brainstorming what I was going to do for my class, and I had like my notebook in front of me, just kind of on the side, and it just had blank paper, and all of a sudden I just started writing. And I have terrible handwriting, so I don't usually like drafting things that way, but I wrote the majority of this essay in my handwriting, so I realized that I couldn't really avoid it, and then I was okay with that because it was going to be like a smaller audience, like mostly I thought a professor, you know, reading it, and then even with that, I was a little bit nervous because it was such a big issue, still is at that time in my life. And I talked to my parents about it because I wanted to make sure that I wasn't abusing the impression of my grandparents at all, because they've always been such strong figures in my life. I didn't want to portray them badly, especially my grandfather. I mean, I couldn't give him half the room I wanted to in this. And so I was trying to be really careful in my like cathartic writing to do their memories justice as well, and not just sort of like profit from them. And so I was really worried about that. And that was really scary. But at the same point in time, like my mom said, the further you get into this, the more important community is with it, and just sharing your experiences with other people who may or may not have those. So that's just writing did a lot.
So I guess just as far as the writing process goes, I just wanted to stay as true as I could. And so there was like I was saying earlier, there's just a lot of like kind of blunt maybe jokes that we have within my family that I just wanted to keep to the true nature of how I saw things. And even on top of that, I think Cicely was referring to this earlier, is that a lot of these just kind of personal issues have a lot of maybe conflict, and so I had quite a bit of unresolved issues in my piece, and so I think just with editing it and revising it, kind of came closer to finding out why, in my piece, why do we go through so much time, put so much money into it. So really it's just kind of staying true to my voice, as well as making sure that I found out why for me. So.
Thank you, authors. And now we'd like to open it up to the audience. If anyone has a question for the panel or an individual author, just go ahead and raise your hand.
I wonder about any writing that you do on your own that somebody doesn't make you do. Whether it's social networking, journaling, anybody?
I journal compulsively, and especially on days when I don't want to journal, I make myself journal, and I'll write really bad poetry sometimes that I like to look back at and be like, hey, you know, it's only uphill from here. But I don't share that. But that's mostly the kind of writing that I do.
Okay, well, I also do journal as well personally, but I do have a blog between friends that kind of started out a couple years ago. Some of ours have like taken off, some of us have like kind of stopped, but I still do from time to time just to kind of talk about personal experiences, and it's great looking back at it and kind of seeing where I was at one point in my life and how much more I can add to it. So it's been a great tool for me.
I guess I'm doing some personal writing for myself that I hope one day I can share with people. My dad's actually really sick, so I'm talking about my different experiences, how like I'm dealing with that, like social issues that have arisen for me. I went to a meeting for a field trip for my management class, and they were talking about catheters actually, and how they're like the white tubes of death and stuff like that. And it's just like coming from a medical family, just hearing stuff like that and how insensitive some people can be, and just dealing with that personally. So maybe one day I'll share it, but we'll see.
Anyone else have a question? Oh, come on, there's so many.
anybody other than teachers and classmates that you get feedback on writing from? Like you share a draft, or you talk, even if they don't see your writing, you talk about it people with? You can say no.
Well, no, yeah. I feel like I'm talking all the time. Yes, I have a friend who is an incredible poet who sometimes I'm brash enough to share my poetry with. And he also, he likes to rap and freestyle off the top of his head, and he is excellent at not only making a rhyme, but also conceptually and poignantly impactful in a second. And so he's a lot of fun because we not only write together, but we also, he teaches me how to freestyle sometimes, which is like verbal writing, right? So, yes.
Is that a no for the rest of you? Right, any other questions?
I'll ask one. So I teach in the writing program, and I'm curious, you guys have all been through at least one of our courses, and if you yourselves were hired by our program and assigned to design a course in writing, what would you be sure, like one or two things you'd be sure to do with your students?
I feel like I should answer this because my former writing professor is sitting in the audience. But I think part of what I enjoyed about my writing program, or like my writing class when I was here, was that we had the option that if you didn't like the score or whatever that you got on paper, you could edit it and continually turn that in and continually get feedback on it. And I think that was probably the most valuable thing that I had. Not only did we like have to do like actual research and like kind of like in our like we kind of had majors at that point. This would have been like freshman year for me. But like pick your major and like do a research. But we also had to do like a press release and like a little bit more creative stuff as well. But then like continually getting feedback and having to go back in and revise it was probably the most valuable thing to me, because the trap I fall into when I'm writing at least is that I will write it and then I will just like want to get it away from me as fast as possible because I'm normally kind of like tired of writing like an 8-page paper and don't want to look at it anymore. But like having to go back over and like review it and like think about it more and more is probably the most helpful thing.
For me, spring quarter, my writing class was somewhat service learning. So we were able to go outside the classroom, and we had worked with this homeless shelter for women called The Gathering Place. And we were able to interview them, like hear their stories, and that really was an enriching experience. So I think that would be a great part to incorporate to our writing program, taking learning outside the classroom.
I would absolutely agree with that. Actually, for Dr. Sampson's class, we had the opportunity to go outside and kind of observe different cultures, maybe subgroups. And so I actually went to a alternative education system. It was a high school just in downtown Denver. And through my observations, I did interviews with students. So it was just incredible to see how they thought of themselves, as well as just how the system would impact them. And so definitely just kind of going out there and working with the community, I think that's huge. And so it was great.
Another question out here?
I just have a question for you. What experiences have you had at DU that have made you better, more confident writers?
This whole process made me more confident. this whole process has made me more confident about writing. I think just being able to publish writing, and display it to the world.
I think that this entire publication process was a really good experience for that reason. Like the idea that, not because like, I already graduated, but I went through 4 years of professors really being the only one who like saw like the finished product of my work. Like, I might kind of chat with like friends about like, oh, I have to write a paper, but not like actually let them read it. So the idea not only that a professor, thought I did really well on an assignment, but that assignment could then go
in my Writ Large class, or my Writ 1133 class, the peer reviews are really helpful because, and the drafting of my piece, because like my peers are looking at it and they could give me a lot of advice that perhaps the teacher couldn't give me, and I just think that was really helpful and it made me more confident about sharing my piece with my fellow peers.
Okay, and this might be a little bit different, but just going through the Daniels College of Business, I got to work a lot in professional writing for resume, cover letter, that sort of stuff. And so as far as not just maybe literary or rhetoric, I think you can get different modes of writing through different departments as well. So just in general, that's been helpful.
All right, we'll do the last call for questions. Any students who are wondering what the answers are? Otherwise, we'll move forward. Everyone can give a round of applause.
I just want to thank you guys again. I'm sure when you were sitting at your computers, when you wrote your papers, you had no idea you'd be sitting in front of the room with people talking about your process, but it was so great to hear the stories behind the pieces. So thank you so much for coming out and doing this. And now I want to kind of flip the tables on you guys a little bit and ask you a question about your experiences with being a part of the student editorial work. Do you want to talk about how that maybe impacted your view of writing and your experience with writing?
All right. So Whitney talked about, I guess, her start as an editor, so maybe I'll do a little bit of that first. For me, all I did is I saw the email and I responded and it ended up here. And it's been a really great experience just to work with these authors and the two main components, I guess, were the selection process and then working individually with each of these authors and helping better their piece and prepare it for publication. And both have been really enjoyable, both processes. As Whitney mentioned before, the selection process, it was great and there are a lot of great readers and great works there, but we couldn't make them all, which is a shame. But it's awesome to see just how wide that range of writing here is at DU. And actually, it's awesome to see that we're getting this journal finally, so all of you can witness that as well. And it's something that many colleges do, so I'm very excited that DU is doing this as well. In terms of working with authors one-on-one, I work at the Writing Center, so I've done a lot of collaboration with writing. But this time, this was unique because it was great to work with the authors on more of an extended basis and to keep up with them and make sure they got to the end goal. And here it is presented for you now in this magazine. So that's what I enjoyed about the process.
Well, I already spoke to this a little bit, so I won't be a broken record, hopefully too much. So I sort of explained how I came to this magazine. Monica just brought up some great points. But I think my favorite part about this process was not only working with the authors and reading what they had written, which was phenomenal, but also working with the faculty on staff here. They've just been so helpful, and it's been wonderful to actually work with professors to come to a project and an end goal together. And that was really nice to do, especially as a senior. I really enjoyed the process of actually being able to work alongside professors and learn from them, both in their editorial styles and the way they kind of think about writing and they think about these students, but also to see just the degree of passion that our professors here at DU and in the writing department especially have for student writing and for really helping people to succeed. That was really fantastic to see. And overall, it was a really great learning experience, and I know I'll apply a lot of the lessons that I'm learning, like editorial, correspondence, communication, deciding what goes in, what goes out later in life as well. And fun fact, I think our entire staff of student editors is graduating this year, is that right? So we need more students, wink wink, hint hint, apply. It's really fun, it's a great learning experience. If nothing else, it looks amazing on your resume. So, give it a try. Thanks for that. Serious. So thank you guys, and I also want to again thank Devin and Ellie, our other two student editors over there. Yeah, so as Whitney mentioned, is it three or four of you? All four of you? No, are graduating?
No.
So 3 of our 4 student editors are graduating, and I will say too, from our perspective, it was just as enriching to work with all of you on a project and see it to completion. So we have calls out there for editors if anyone is interested in going through that part of the process. We are looking for people, actively looking for people who want to do that next year. And we also have a call out for submissions. So we will be looking for people who are wanting to share their work, potentially like this as well, but also just to see your work published and work with both faculty and students, really seeing a draft through farther than you ever probably thought you could see it through. And most of what we saw here was from the Writ classes, but also Sarah's example shows we're also looking for writing from any class that you've taken, so or anything that you've done outside of class too that you want to see published. And if you have any questions about that after this, we'll be outside, the 4 of us, or the 4 of you guys, and faculty editors will be outside too, so please feel free to ask us any questions if you're interested. And then I also, again, just want to thank the faculty editors, Liz Drogan, Heather Martin, Sydney Alexis, and LP, Lauren Picard, for her design work. Also want to thank Carol Sampson, and you'll see some writing from her as well in the journal about her assignment and the work that some of her students produced. And then thanks again to Doug Hesse for making all of this possible. So the student authors will be outside at their amazing posters. And so please, if you have other questions that you want to ask them, please find them out there. We also have copies of both this year and last year's Writ Large, so please feel free to take that too, and then you can read more of all of their writing than the little snippet that you heard tonight. And then also we have some amazing looking cupcakes and all kinds of baked goodies, so please help yourself. And thank you so much for coming and supporting student writing here at DU.